Antony Blinken arrives in Tel Aviv as Israeli forces surround Gaza City. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv on Friday to push for a pause in the fighting in Gaza as concerns mounted that the war could escalate into a regional conflict. Israel said it was on high alert on its northern border with Lebanon after a series of intensifying cross-border exchanges of fire with the Iran-backed Lebanese militant organization Hezbollah. Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah leader, is due to address his followers later on Friday, in what will be his first public comments since the war between Israel and Hamas broke out. Concern is growing in Israel that the speech could herald the opening of a second front in the war. Richard Hecht, a spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces, warned Nasrallah not to escalate Hezbollah's attacks. It wouldn't be in his interests, he said. Our response will be very, very severe, and very violent. We're saying to the Lebanese, don't sacrifice your future for Hamas, he went on. Israel attacked Gaza after Hamas's deadly assault on the Jewish state on October 7 that killed 1,400 people, according to Israeli officials. Hamas also took 242 hostages. After an intense aerial bombardment of Gaza, the IDF launched its ground incursion into the enclave a week ago and says it has encircled Gaza City, Hamas's political and military base. More than 9,000 people have died in Gaza since the war started, according to health officials in the enclave. Aid agencies have warned of a humanitarian catastrophe as the area runs out of food, water, medicine, and fuel. The suffering of Gaza's civilian population has stoked international demands for a ceasefire, an option the IDF said on Thursday was not on the table. But the U.S. is keen to establish localized pauses in fighting that would make it easier to bring in aid to the beleaguered population. On Friday, Blinken said that the U.S. stands strong for the proposition that Israel has not only the right but the obligation to defend itself. But he also said that how Israel does this matters. It was very important that when it comes to civilians who are caught in the crossfire of Hamas's making, that everything be done to protect them and to bring assistance to those who so desperately need it. The IDF's Hecht said that having completed its encirclement of Gaza City, the army was now engaged in a complex urban fight. It's very close-quarter combat between our troops and Hamas operatives, he said. Hamas militants were emerging quickly from tunnels and firing rockets from positions close to civilian areas. Hecht said the next stage of the offensive was to start handling Hamas infrastructure inside Gaza City. He said one infantry brigade was already there, attacking Hamas infrastructure. He also said that overnight Israel's forces took control of several Hamas strongholds, seizing large troves of weapons including grenades, explosive charges, and communications equipment. Another IDF spokesman, Daniel Hagari, said the IDF was in a high state of operational preparedness on the northern border, following a series of cross-border exchanges of fire with Hezbollah. In recent days, Hezbollah has been directing mortar fire, anti-tank missiles, and suicide drones at Israel, while Hamas fighters in Lebanon have fired rockets at the northern Israeli town of Kiryat Shmona. Israel has responded with airstrikes and artillery shelling of Lebanese border areas. Nasrallah will address his followers at 3 p.m., 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, at a ceremony to honor the dozens of fighters who have died in the last month of hostilities with Israel. Lebanese officials familiar with Hezbollah's thinking told the Financial Times that the group had come under intense diplomatic pressure to keep its response proportional to avoid the conflict spreading. Hezbollah has said that at least 55 of its fighters have been killed in the cross-border fighting. Blinken's visit to Israel, his second in the past month, is the first leg of a diplomatic tour of the Middle East. From Tel Aviv he will travel to Jordan, which has recalled its ambassador to Israel, accusing the country of creating an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Israel also announced it had sent 2,000 Gazans who were working in the country when the war broke out back to the territory. Israel is severing all contact with Gaza, Netanyahu's office said in a post on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. There will be no more Palestinian workers from Gaza. The workers were returned via the Kerem Shalom crossing to the safe zones of the southern strip. There were an estimated 3,300 permit-holding Gazan workers in Israel on October 7, and the remaining numbers will be returned in future rounds.